I used to believe that betrayal came like thunder, sudden, deafening, impossible to miss. But I learned it's quieter than that. It starts with small lies, with a phone turned face down, with a sister who stops calling as often. When my husband Ethan betrayed me with my own sister, Lily, it didn't just shatter my marriage. It erased everything I thought I knew about love, family, and loyalty. I lost my job, my home, even my reflection in the mirror. Ethan said I'd never rise again, that I was finished. And for a while, I believed him. Until the night I dropped my phone charger and saw something hidden beneath the motel bed, a dusty brown suitcase with my name on the tag. Inside was $90,000 in cash, a plane ticket, and a note in my late aunt's handwriting. This is just travel money. The real fortune is waiting at this address. Before everything collapsed, my life looked painfully ordinary, the kind of life you assume will stretch on forever just because it feels predictable. I was 33, living in Seattle, working as a marketing manager for a mid-sized firm that specialized in small business campaigns. It wasn't glamorous, but it was steady. I knew the people in my building by name. I brought coffee to the receptionist every Monday. I had plans, routines, and the quiet arrogance of someone who thought life rewarded effort. Ethan and I had been married for 5 years. He ran a small construction company, the type of man who wore work boots with confidence and always came home smelling like sawdust and late afternoons. He wasn't the most affectionate husband, but he was dependable. At least, I thought he was. And then there was Lily, my younger sister. She was the free spirit of the family, 3 years younger, radiant in every way I wasn't. Where I was careful, she was spontaneous. Where I followed the rules, she rewrote them. She used to call me the responsible one with a teasing smile, and I'd laugh, half proud, half tired. When Ethan and I bought our small condo near Green Lake, Lily helped us move in. She joked about how we looked like a grown-up couple, then spent the night drinking wine with us on the balcony, telling stories that made Ethan laugh harder than I'd heard in months. I didn't notice then how often he looked at her, how easily they fit into conversation. Every Sunday, she'd come over for dinner. Ethan insisted, saying, "She's family, Claire. You work too much. It's good to have her around." I agreed, because that's what sisters do, right? We share everything. But small things began to shift. Ethan started staying out late for client meetings. He'd text during dinner, then smile when I asked who it was. "Just work," he'd say. Lily began canceling plans with me, saying she was busy with someone new. Sometimes I'd catch her perfume lingering in our hallway even when she wasn't there. Once, I found a silver earring under the couch. Not mine. When I asked Ethan, he said, "It probably fell when Lily was visiting." I wanted to believe him. I forced myself to. Because the alternative, the thought that the two people I trusted most might share a secret, was unbearable. So I did what people always do before their lives explode. I ignored the warning signs. I kept working, cooking, cleaning, pretending that silence was stability and that distance was just exhaustion. But deep down, I already knew. Something between them had shifted, something invisible but undeniable. And once you sense that kind of betrayal, it's only a matter of time before it surfaces. It happened on a Thursday, gray sky, drizzle on the windshield, the kind of afternoon that smelled like cold coffee and exhaustion. I'd left work early after my boss said, "You seem distracted lately, Claire. Go home, get some rest." Rest. That word would mock me later. When I turned into our driveway, I froze. Lily's white Mazda was parked next to Ethan's truck. My stomach twisted. She was supposed to be at her apartment across town. I told myself a story, maybe she'd stopped by to drop something off. Maybe Ethan was helping her with car trouble. But when I reached the door, it was unlocked. Inside, the air felt heavy, warm, lived in. A half-drunk glass of wine sat on the counter, 2 plates on the table. "Ethan?" I called out, voice tight. "Lily?" No answer. Just a faint sound down the hallway, laughter. My sister's laughter. I moved toward our bedroom, each step slower than the last. The laughter shifted, softer, intimate, threaded with something I'd never heard directed at me in years. I pushed the door open before I could change my mind, and there they were, Ethan and Lily, tangled in the gray sheets I'd changed that morning, his hands on her skin like they belonged there. For a second, no one moved. Then Ethan's face turned white. Lily gasped, clutching the blanket to her chest. Claire, Ethan started, stepping toward me. Don't. My voice came out sharp, unfamiliar. Don't you dare say my name. Lily's lips trembled. It's not what you think. I laughed. It sounded hollow. Oh, please. What else could it be? Ethan sighed. That same irritated sigh he used when I burned dinner. It just happened, Claire. You've been so distant lately. So this is my fault? I shot back. Because I trusted you? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling. You're twisting this, Lily whispered. I didn't mean to hurt you. You didn't mean to? I snapped. You climbed into my bed. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sympathy, only disbelief that the girl I'd protected all my life could do this. Ethan looked at me with something like relief, as if finally being caught was easier than pretending. Maybe we should stop lying to ourselves, Claire. Things haven't been working for a long time. The world went silent after that. No shouting, no drama, just a strange calm. I walked to the closet, grabbed a duffel bag, and began to pack. Where are you going? Lily asked, voice shaking. Anywhere you're not. Ethan called after me. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I paused at the door, looked back once. You already did. Then I left into the rain, into the wreckage of everything I thought was safe. And for the first time I realized, you don't lose everything in one day. You just finally notice it's already gone. The days after that felt like walking through smoke, everything blurred, nothing solid. I moved into a cheap motel on the south side of Seattle, the kind of place where the walls smelled like cigarettes and despair. Room 19. The bed squeaked, the heater rattled, and the only company I had was the buzz of the neon sign outside flickering vacancy. I filed for divorce, thinking I could at least reclaim some dignity. Instead, Ethan filed first. His lawyer sent a letter filled with words that didn't sound real. Emotional instability, abandonment, unfit for spousal maintenance. They were describing me as if I were a stranger. Lily never called. Not once. I saw photos online, her smiling beside Ethan at a charity event we'd once attended together. They looked happy. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. When I lost my job 2 weeks later, I didn't even cry. My boss, Mr. Walsh, wouldn't look me in the eye. It's not performance, Claire, he said quietly. It's optics. Clients talk. Optics. I'd given that company 7 years, and now I was a liability because my husband had cheated. My parents didn't help. Mom called once, her voice soft but sharp underneath. Honey, maybe you pushed him too hard. Men don't like feeling cornered. I hung up. Dad didn't call at all. But Lily did through a text that said, I'm sorry things got messy. Maybe someday we can talk. I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. There are some bridges that deserve to burn. Bills piled up. My credit cards maxed out. I sold my wedding ring at a pawn shop for $300. The man behind the counter barely glanced at it before saying, Best I can do. I nodded. That's fine. At night, I'd stare at the motel ceiling and think about Ethan's last words before I left. You'll never rise again, Claire. You're just not built for it. Anyone's estate. Maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't built for this kind of pain. I tried applying for jobs, sending resumes into the void, but no one called back. It was as if my name had become radioactive. People sensed failure and stayed away. The motel became my whole world, the hum of the vending machine, the stale coffee, the silence between 2 and 4 a.m. When the world forgets you exist. One night, I dropped my phone charger. It rolled under the bed, and I cursed, kneeling on the carpet to reach it. My fingers brushed against something solid, cold, metallic corners. I pulled it out, a dusty brown suitcase. Old, heavy, with a luggage tag dangling from the handle. And on that tag, written in looping ink I hadn't seen in years, was my name, Claire Anderson. That was the moment everything changed. Not because I knew what was inside, but because for the first time in months, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt curiosity. I stared at that suitcase for a long time, sitting cross-legged on the motel floor, the neon light from the window washing everything in sickly pink. The tag dangled from the handle, the ink slightly faded, but unmistakable Claire Anderson, written in my Aunt Margaret's graceful cursive. Margaret Hughes, my mother's older sister, the eccentric one, The woman everyone in the family whispered about behind closed doors. She'd lived alone in Oregon, collecting evidence about conspiracies no one believed in. When she died the previous year, the family barely held a funeral. I'd sent flowers, nothing more. My pulse quickened as I turned the suitcase over and felt something taped to the bottom, a small key in a plastic bag. Typical Aunt Margaret, always hiding things in plain sight. The lock clicked open with a dull snap. Inside were stacks of cash, banded, neat, unmarked, $90,000. I just sat there, staring at it, waiting for reality to reassert itself. Under the cash was a yellowed envelope. My hands shook as I slid the letter out. Claire, if you're reading this, it means they've already taken everything from you, your job, your home, your peace. Don't waste time asking how I know. I've been watching this unfold for years. This is just travel money. The real fortune waits at this address. Below the paragraph was a handwritten address in Portland, Oregon. And one last line, underlined twice. Don't trust Ethan. Don't trust Lily. Finish what your mother started before they silenced her. I read those words over and over until they blurred. Before they silenced her. My mother, Evelyn, had died in what the police called a single-vehicle accident 10 years ago. Rain, slick roads, instant tragedy. No one questioned it, least of all me. Now the words on the page made my skin crawl. My throat tightened. What the hell did you know, Aunt Margaret? I whispered into the silence. The air felt heavier, as if the room itself was listening. Outside, a siren wailed somewhere far away. I shoved the money back into the suitcase, folded the note carefully, and sat on the edge of the bed. $90,000, a ticket to anywhere, and an address that might hold answers I wasn't sure I wanted. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's car crumpled against a tree, Ethan's blank expression, Lily's trembling hands clutching a blanket. By sunrise, I'd made my choice. I wasn't running anymore. I was done hiding in this motel like a ghost waiting to disappear. I packed my duffel bag with a few clothes, my laptop, and that suitcase. Then I looked at my reflection in the cracked mirror and whispered, "You were wrong, Ethan. I will rise again." And for the first time in months, I meant it. The flight to Portland left early the next morning. I paid cash at the counter, using a fake smile to hide the fear clawing at my ribs. The agent handed me the ticket without looking twice, just another tired traveler with messy hair and too many secrets. As the plane lifted off, I pressed my forehead against the window and watched Seattle shrink into a blur of gray clouds. I wasn't running away this time. I was following a trail. My aunt had left a message from the grave, and I was going to find out what she meant, even if I didn't like the answer. The rain greeted me as soon as I landed. Portland was colder, quieter, the kind of place that felt haunted by its own weather. I rented a small silver sedan with some of the cash and punched the address from the letter into the GPS. The drive took me 30 minutes, long enough for doubt to creep in. What if I was chasing a ghost? What if grief had finally pushed me over the edge, just like Ethan said it would? The voice on the GPS interrupted my thoughts. "You have arrived at your destination." The house sat at the end of a narrow road near Lake Oswego, small, single-story, hidden behind an overgrown hedge. The yard was a jungle of weeds and wildflowers. The mailbox still read M. Hughes. My hands trembled as I unlocked the front door with the key from the suitcase. The door creaked open into a wall of dust and silence. Inside, it looked like time had stopped. Books and folders were stacked in impossible towers. Filing cabinets lined the living room. The coffee table was buried under notes, photographs, and newspaper clippings. It wasn't clutter, it was organized chaos. Every folder was labeled in my aunt's perfect handwriting. Meridian Pharmaceuticals, internal reports, trial data. Evelyn Anderson, my breath caught. Evelyn Anderson, my mother. I sank to my knees beside one of the boxes and pulled out a thick folder. Inside were printed emails, company memos, financial spreadsheets. None of it made sense yet, but every page felt dangerous, the kind of evidence people don't collect unless they're afraid of dying for it. On the old wooden desk sat a laptop, closed but still plugged in. Beside it, an envelope labeled, "For Claire only." My hands shook as I tore it open. Inside was a USB drive and a short note in Margaret's handwriting. "Play this. Trust only the truth." I swallowed hard. My reflection in the dark laptop screen looked like someone else, someone who had already lost too much to turn back. When the video began to play, I saw her face older, thinner, but unmistakably my aunt's. "Claire," she said softly, "if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And it means the danger hasn't ended." I leaned closer, my heart pounding. That was the moment I realized I hadn't just inherited money. I'd inherited a war. My aunt's voice filled the quiet house, trembling but steady enough to freeze my blood. "Claire, you've been lied to your entire life. Your mother didn't die in an accident." She was silenced. "Meridian Pharmaceuticals covered up drug trial deaths, and your mother found out. She gathered evidence and confided in me. I tried to protect her, but they got to her first." My heart hammered so hard it hurt. "No," I whispered at the screen. "She fell asleep at the wheel." That's what they said. Margaret's tone sharpened. "They made it look that way. They've done it before. Your mother's death report was falsified. I have the originals. And Claire, the man you married? He was part of it." I froze. "Ethan's real name is Ethan Cole. He was hired years ago by Meridian to monitor you and your mother's correspondence. He didn't meet you by chance, sweetheart. He was placed in your life. And Lily, she was groomed to keep you compliant after Evelyn's death." The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. "No," I said, shaking my head. "Ethan wouldn't, Lily wouldn't." Then the video changed. My aunt's tired face faded into a screen of files she'd compiled, folders, opening one after another. Recordings, financial logs, employee notes. I clicked on the first audio file. Static, then a voice I knew better than my own. "Ethan, she's starting to suspect. Claire keeps asking questions about her mother's crash. We can't hold this much longer." A second voice, male, colder, older. "You know what happens if she digs too deep. Keep her distracted. That's what the sister's for." "Ethan, Lily's already in. She's close to her. I'll make sure she steers her away." The sound of their voices ripped through me like glass. My knees buckled. I sank to the floor, covering my mouth to stop the scream clawing its way out. I played another recording, this one labeled, "Boardroom, Meridian HQ, Classified. Evelyn Anderson won't back down," the older man said. "Richard Moss, Meridian's CEO. If she goes to the FDA, we lose billions. Ethan, she's smart but sentimental. She's trying to protect her daughter. If we control Claire, we control Evelyn." Then, the older voice. "And if she won't be controlled?" A pause. Then, casually, "Accidents happen." My whole body went cold. Ethan had sat at my dinner table, kissed me goodnight, whispered "I love you" while planning the murder of my mother. My breath came in shallow bursts. "You killed her," I whispered to the empty room. "You used me." I played one last file, labeled, "Lily, internal line 12. Lily. She's breaking down. If she loses the job, she'll stop fighting." That's what Ethan said. "She's too proud to survive without stability." Unknown voice. "Good. The weaker she gets, the quieter she'll stay." That was it. My sister, my own blood, had helped destroy me. The betrayal burned hotter than grief. I wanted to throw the laptop, scream until my voice broke, but I didn't. I forced myself to listen until the end. Margaret's video reappeared. "Claire, by now you've seen enough to know what they did. I've hidden everything, the documents, the recordings, even your mother's original research. And I've built a trust fund in your name. Stocks, property, resources. It's yours, but it's more than money. It's a weapon. If you want peace, take the cash and disappear. But if you want justice, use it." She paused, coughing, blood staining a tissue she tried to hide from the camera. "Agent Maria Torres at the Portland FBI office. She's the only one you can trust. Tell her, Project Solace. She'll understand." Her eyes softened for a moment. "Evelyn loved you, Claire. She died trying to protect you. Don't let them bury her truth." The screen went black. I sat there in the half-dark, shaking, my chest tight with too many emotions to name: grief, fury, disbelief. I remembered Ethan's words the night I caught him with Lily. Maybe it was already ruined. No, it wasn't ruined, it was designed to be. From the start. A sob tore from my throat. I pressed my fists to my eyes until the tears stopped. Then, for the first time in months, I stood up straighter. I wasn't the broken woman they'd left behind in that motel room anymore. I picked up the phone and dialed the number Margaret had left. FBI Portland Field Office, a woman's voice said. This is Claire Anderson, I said, my voice trembling but clear. I have information about Project Solace and the murder of Evelyn Anderson. There was a pause, then a sharp intake of breath. Where are you right now? At my aunt's house. Don't move, she said quickly. Don't talk to anyone. I'm coming to you. As I ended the call, the last of my fear bled away, replaced by something sharper, colder purpose. They thought they'd destroyed me, but they'd only given me something stronger than vengeance. A reason to fight. Agent Maria Torres arrived 40 minutes later, a woman in her mid-40s with tired eyes, hair tied back in a no-nonsense ponytail, and the kind of calm that only comes from seeing too much. She flashed her badge, but it was her expression that struck me most. A mixture of skepticism and hope. Claire Anderson? She asked. I nodded. You're Torres? She stepped past me into the house, scanning the stacks of folders and boxes. If this is what I think it is, she murmured, your aunt was sitting on evidence worth a dozen indictments. I led her to the hidden crawl space beneath the floor, where Margaret had stored the most sensitive files. Maria crouched, shining her flashlight over the labeled drawers. Meridian Board Communications, Trial Manipulations, Evelyn Anderson, Confidential. Her brows furrowed. She cataloged everything. She was called paranoid, I said quietly. Turns out she was just prepared. For hours we worked side by side, logging every recording, every document, every photograph. Maria's professional detachment slowly cracked into awe. This isn't just negligence, she said. It's conspiracy, financial fraud, bribery, homicide. Claire, this could take down half the pharmaceutical board. By the next morning, federal vans surrounded the property. Agents and windbreakers moved in and out, carrying boxes sealed with evidence tape. Maria never left my side. When I faltered, she handed me coffee and said, You did the right thing. Your aunt would be proud. Within a week, the headlines hit. FBI launches federal investigation into Meridian Pharmaceuticals. CEO Richard Moss under fire for fraud and data manipulation. And beneath the fold, 2 civilians connected to internal whistleblower case identified as Ethan Cole and Lily Anderson. Seeing their names in print was surreal. The betrayal that had felt so private now belonged to the world. Maria called me one evening from Washington. We got them, she said simply. Ethan had been arrested at his new office in Seattle. The agents found encrypted payments from Meridian deposited into offshore accounts, proof he'd been on their payroll since before he met me. Lily was picked up 2 days later in San Diego, where she'd gone to start over. She broke down the moment they showed her the recordings. But justice wasn't a single headline. It was a slow grind. For weeks, Maria and the prosecutors interviewed me, piecing together the story from my mother's death to Ethan's marriage contract. Every document Margaret had collected became a brick in a wall that finally held. Then came the trials. Richard Moss faced 17 federal charges: fraud, conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and accessory to murder. I sat in the back of the courtroom, invisible among reporters, as recordings played of his calm voice ordering permanent solutions. He didn't look at me once, but I watched him flinch when the jury foreman said, guilty. 23 years in federal prison. Ethan's trial came next. I thought I'd feel satisfaction seeing him in handcuffs, but when he turned and our eyes met, all I felt was exhaustion. He still looked so sure of himself, as if charm could save him. His lawyer argued he'd been manipulated by people far above his pay grade. The prosecutor played the tape of his voice, calmly discussing my mother's murder. The jury took less than 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. 15 years. Lily avoided a full trial by testifying against Meridian's board. She received 8 years. Her lawyer said she'd been young and impressionable. I didn't attend her sentencing. When it was all over, Maria met me outside the courthouse. The air smelled like wet asphalt and new beginnings. You did it, she said. I shook my head. We did it. My aunt did it. She smiled faintly. Your family tore down an empire. Weeks later, I received an official letter from the federal courts. Case re: Evelyn Anderson, wrongful death, resolved. Meridian was ordered to pay $12 million in damages, money I didn't want but couldn't refuse. I donated it to medical whistleblower protection funds in my mother's name. Maria called one last time. The trust your aunt mentioned, it's real. $14 million. She made sure you'd never have to depend on anyone again. 14 million. I sat in stunned silence. But what stayed with me wasn't the money. It was Margaret's faith that truth still mattered, that even when the world buried it, someone could dig it back up. For the first time in years, I slept through the night without dreams of falling. Justice had arrived not as vengeance, but as balance restored. Months passed after the verdicts, but justice didn't feel like a victory parade. It was quieter, like the air after a storm, when the wreckage is finally still. Meridian's empire crumbled. Their stock collapsed overnight. News anchors called it the most significant corporate takedown in 2 decades. I spent those months in Portland, away from the noise. Maria helped me find a small apartment overlooking the Willamette River. It wasn't fancy, 1-bedroom, creaky floors, sunlight that warmed the curtains each morning, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I felt peace in the quiet. One afternoon, Maria stopped by holding a thin envelope. "You should open this," she said with a rare smile. Inside was a letter from the trust office Margaret had established. "Dear Miss Anderson, pursuant to the terms of the Hughes Trust, you are the sole beneficiary of stock portfolios, real estate assets, and patents related to pharmaceutical reform. Current valuation, $14.2 million. 14 million. My hands trembled, not from greed but disbelief. Aunt Margaret hadn't just left me money, she'd left me a foundation for a new life, a way to keep fighting for what my mother died protecting. I didn't buy mansions or sports cars. I used a portion of the trust to start the Evelyn Project, a nonprofit supporting whistleblowers, single mothers, and victims of corporate retaliation. We funded legal defense teams, launched awareness campaigns, and gave survivors a place to tell their stories without fear. Every time someone said, "You're changing lives," I thought of my mother and my aunt, 2 women dismissed as emotional, paranoid, difficult, who turned out to be right. I kept the brown suitcase in my office, on a shelf above my desk. Still dusty, still scarred from its journey. Sometimes I'd run my fingers over the tag Claire Anderson and remember the woman I was when I found it. Fragile, betrayed, ready to disappear. Now I knew better. The real fortune wasn't the $90,000, or even the millions. It was the strength that came from surviving the wreckage, from standing up after being told I'd never rise again. Ethan once said I wasn't built for this kind of pain. He was right about one thing: I wasn't built for pain. I was rebuilt by it. Lily wrote from prison last month. Her letter began with, "I don't expect forgiveness." I haven't replied. Maybe one day I will. Or maybe silence is the only answer she deserves. Sometimes, I drive past the old motel, room 19 still flickers under that broken neon sign. I sit in my car and whisper, "Thank you," to the woman who crawled out of that darkness. Because she found not just justice, she found herself. And that, I've learned, is the kind of fortune no one can ever steal.